Unreal Engine is a fantastic environment for procedural audio. Especially the MetaSounds framework is built for generating crazy soundscapes and having control over several DSP parameters. The one thing that it's missing though is a granular synthesis pipeline. And that is exactly what I have made and I'm going to show you in this video. This is the Granular Toolkit. It contains a bunch of MetaSound sources and patches that you can use on your own recordings and turn them into procedural versions. The benefit of using granular synthesis compared to audio loops is that you get a lot more variation and control over the dynamics of the sound. The granular playback never repeats itself exactly the same way, plus you get control over parameters that dictate the feeling of the sound. The best part is that this toolkit is entirely free. I'm writing my master thesis around granular synthesis and the usability thereof, as well as the perceived quality and learning curve for regular users. This toolkit is the result of the design research that I conducted, and I'm giving it away for free to help the community. So let's have a look at what's inside. On my website, you can find the Granular Toolkit links, which are either the full project or the plugin. Both essentially work the same way. There's two folders inside for the MetaSound sources and MetaSound patches. The sources can be played as standalone sounds. The patches are used as utilities inside of the sources. For everyday uses, you're going to look at the MSS_ prefix. This includes a simple granular synthesis, an advanced granular synthesis, an intensity controller, a vehicle controller, and a granular scatterer. Every patch comes with a control panel that showcases the inputs. If you hover over them, you'll see that tooltips appear. These tooltips help you understand what the parameter does and how you can use them. If you look inside of the patches themselves, you will see that all of the logic is grouped together in comment boxes to help you understand how it works. Every one of these patches is fully extendable, so if you want to add on extra features or remove some features, you're totally free to do so. The simple granular synthesis patch showcases the essential parameters. It works well for simple soundscapes, background layers, or any sustained texture. It's intended for simple, non-dynamic soundscapes or other sustained sounds. It works very simply by just alternating two grains that always pick a random position within the sample. This means that you don't need to select looping samples to begin with. It also includes a trim for the sample start and end in case you want to use a sample that has a fade in and fade out. I recommend using larger grain lengths around 1 or 2 seconds to be able to preserve the natural texture of the sound. The next one is Granular Intensity. This patch is able to dynamically control the perceived intensity or size of a sound. It works by manipulating the grain rate, the pitch variation, stereo width, subtle wave shaping, and frequency boosting all together in one parameter. This tool works great for soundscapes that can vary in size, like rivers, wind, or rain. It also works well with sounds that have some sort of tonality or recognizable transients, as increasing the intensity spreads out the tonal spectrum and introduces more of those transients. For example, if you use a flock of birds or insects or even people walking in the street, the amount of individual events will increase as you turn up the intensity. For more recognizable sounds like people speaking, it is recommended to use a larger grain size to keep the original character of the recording, but keep in mind that larger grain sizes also slow down the reactivity of the intensity parameter. The pitch variation between the grains, for example, only has an effect as soon as the next grain starts, so if you use a very slow grain speed, it might take some time before those changes go into effect. This intensity parameter is honestly the biggest asset of the pipeline. By linking all these parameters together, you get a very simple and intuitive control over the dynamics of your sound without needing to do any extra sound design work. This also eliminates the need for introducing multiple loops for varying intensities, like for example rivers, as now you can simply adjust one parameter and the sound design happens for you. You also get control over the envelope strength, and this basically means the attack and decay curve of the crossfading grains. Next up is the Granular Vehicle. This patch is made specifically for vehicles that have an engine. You can use the scrub position to define exactly where you want the grains to be placed. This one works really great for vehicle sounds that accelerate over time. Combining this parameter with the pitch and the grain length allows you to generate dynamic car engines that react realistically to gameplay. It's recommended for this one especially to find clean recordings, as any artifact or imperfection in the sample can become very clear when scrubbing through it. I recommend using a grain rate of between 0.2 to 0.3 as it generates a realistic car engine noise. There's also some parameters that introduce some variation in the grains, like pitch and scrubbing variation, so that the engine selects grains that are slightly offset from the position that you set it at. In this one, you can also play with the envelope strength, giving more or less attack and decay to each grain. Next up is the Granular Advanced. This one is specifically for granular synthesis enthusiasts who want all individual parameters on the surface. It functions very similar to Granular Intensity, except every parameter is now unlinked and exposed so you can experiment with different combinations of values. It also introduces some more variation with not only the pitch, but also the volume and the panning. Lastly, there's the Granular Scatterer. This patch is meant as a top layer to scatter sounds on top of an existing soundscape. It selects randomized regions within a sample and then plays them back at randomized intervals using randomized panning. Parameters are split into minimum and maximum values so that every playback sounds different. This tool works best with sounds that are completely isolated and have no background noise. I highly recommend using this for sounds like bird calls or frogs or insects or whatever, because it adds that extra variation that a normal scatterer doesn't have. Because it selects random regions within the sample and plays with their pitch, every grain will sound slightly different, creating a very natural soundscape. Now all of these granular synthesizers are also supported by utilities, the main one being the grain itself. You can use this utility yourself if you want to make a custom granular synthesizer. Some other utilities include a random channel flipper, a random panner, and a stereo width control. I also devised a more responsive trigger repeat that works based on a square wave rather than a timer. This is done so that if you change the grain rate really rapidly, there won't ever be any gaps in the playback. Lastly, there's also a pitch multiplier node that helps define the range that a grain can be in using the original sample length, the start and end trims, and the pitch. I really hope that this toolkit helps people get creative with sound design and allows them to create evolving ambiences, dynamic vehicles, procedural soundscapes, and entirely new sonic textures without too much work. If you're looking for new ways to make your game audio more dynamic, more procedural, and less repetitive, this toolkit was built for exactly that. You can follow the link in my description to my website where the toolkit is displayed. And remember, it's totally free. Let me know in the comments what you think and have an amazing rest of your day.